Hello, everyone. Welcome to Geek Tank, where everything is a matter of geek. I'm your host, Zia.
And I'm your host, Kay.
And today we have a very special guest here. We are sitting with voice actor Paul St. Peter, who has done over 200 roles in the industry. You may know him as Kurama from Naruto, the Nine-Tailed Fox. He's Xemnas in Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts 3 just released. He's also been Wormmon in Digimon and also Leomon. Mm-hmm. So here is the man himself, the man behind all of these voices.
Hey guys, thanks for having me here.
We're glad to have you. The
Yeah.
pleasure is all ours. So you come to these cons, these floor cons, and you do panels here, right?
That's correct, yes. I like to do panels about what I do and how I create the voices, and also panels about the business. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of things that are just a Q&A because everyone wants to know about the shows and that sort of thing.
So your voice actor panel you came up with because people were constantly asking you these questions.
Yes. When I first began doing cons, everybody just was kind of doing Q&As. There wasn't anything really special. But I had a con chairman asking me what kind of panels I could do to fill out their schedule. And other than Q&A, I hadn't really thought that much. I thought that is what we do. But I thought to myself, what should I create? And in fact, all I did was think about all the questions I'm always asked. Mm-hmm. And so I created my panels based on interaction with the fans, their questions, but also talking about how I do voices and how I perform things, and then actually have them get up and perform. So I hand out commercial copy and anime copy that I've done.
In one of these panels, I believe Zia, in a previous con at EY,
That's
he,
right.
He was a performer.
He did. Zia did get up there very bravely.
He got the role of Teeny Tiny.
Teeny Tiny Mouse.
That's right, Teeny Tiny Mouse. That's called casting against type.
And it's one of the great things that, you flat out, you tell them at these panels, what it actually takes to be a voice actor. You put your attendees through the auditions, just like how you go to actual auditions.
I try to give them an idea of what it's like on a regular basis, in my case in Los Angeles, where there is so much of the business and what we need to do to make ourselves, employable, et cetera, and the sense of craft you have to have and to be ready. And I like to communicate some of that and then give them a chance to actually give it a try. Mm-hmm. And you get on microphone and there's an audience there. That doesn't happen in the auditions.
Right.
Your audience is the director and the engineer and maybe somebody from the client, but you don't have a bunch of people around all the time. But it's kind of cool because everybody gets a shot. And when I talk about the creation of the voices and my various techniques, because I'm also a speech teacher and a dialectician, so the technical things I know how to do help me a lot, and I communicate some of that to everyone. So they all get an idea that there's a real process and a physical routine that you have to do.
It's great to see this awesome, that you have this passion for just language in general. And this, as a, dialect coach, which you do in LA, in the West Coast, is that, you teach people on how to use your voice in different dialects in different countries. Mm-hmm. When did this passion begin for you to when you started learning about all these different dialects?
Well, that's always been something with me. I've always been a person who likes language, and I am not, a degreed linguist. I deal with linguistics quite a bit, and I have quite a bit of knowledge. From an early age, my Spanish has always been pretty good. I've always had a good ear for sound, and I try to pick things up. As an historian, I've studied a lot of Zulu history. Mm-hmm. And the books I've read have had lines and bits of words and things like that in the Zulu language with the translation. And I wrote those down. And so I ended up, I've actually twice, for a Disney Movie of the Week, coached the other actors in voiceover how to speak Zulu. And then I used it in the Swahili dialect for Resident Evil 5.
Oh, wow.
It's like I say, I never know where all this stuff that I've ever studied comes up, but it's always been from a very early age. Then I met an instructor who taught with the phonetic alphabet, and that was his specialty. He taught me everything, just about everything he had, and I've been an instructor since then.
That's awesome. And for those that don't know, where can people go in LA? Because I believe you also do classes and you have a school there for voice.
Well, I teach privately.
Okay.
I've taught at Cal State LA and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is out in Pasadena, and then also taught at Cal State LA, San Diego State University. Of course, there was the Academy. I was there for 4 years, and also taught at Performing Arts High School.
That's awesome. That's
So I've done quite a bit. I've coached in shows, just stage plays where they needed me to come in and work with young actors who are not as vocally sophisticated. And I was teaching them what I know as a stage actor, because they were used to working on camera where maybe they're not as worried about all the precise elements of speech. On stage you have to be, and these were very, very inexperienced young actors getting up on a stage to perform, and they were losing words and they were turning their head here, and they didn't finish a whole word. If the word was ahead, and they would say ahead, and to the listener they're just hearing ahead, what is that?
Yeah.
You know? So I would work with them. That's called terminals. You need to finish your words up and finish up your sounds. And many of them have never had any training in that. Other things they've done, they've been on stage, they've worked, and maybe been on camera, but they've never had the technical training.
So as far as acting goes, you don't just do voice acting. You have done stage work as well.
Yeah, I began doing stage work in San Diego. I worked and at first at San Diego Junior Theater, then at the Old Globe Theater and the Cassius Carter Center Stage, and went to work at the Civic Light Opera, which they called Starlight at that time. They're not around anymore as far as I know. And the chorus master at Starlight was also the chorus master for the San Diego Opera Company. So he wanted to bring me in there, so I ended up singing 4 seasons with San Diego Opera. So I did a ton of stage before I ever came to Los Angeles and stepped in front of a camera. It's the best background you can have because you're so grounded and solid in your technique.
So then you didn't originally plan to be a voice actor. Was that something that just happened later on?
It was an element of the work that happened with me. Someone heard that I was good with the accents and the dialects and asked me to come in and read a story for them at a Christmas party. And many of the attendees there were writers, directors, producers, and actors on Robotech.
Oh,
And
wow.
so from reading A Christmas Story, I got into all this.
So then it was a case of being in the right place at the right time.
And knowing the right person who brought me in front of the right people. That's in many ways how you get started and how you get in. It's not the important part, though. It's what you do as a professional to make sure you stay in.
Yeah.
Or as one of my best instructors ever said, I'm going to teach you how to get the second job. Because if you persist, you will always get your first job. If you're a professional and you're good with your craft, that's where the second, third, fourth, and fifth jobs come.
This is why, like, you're known in the industry as that voice. Like
That
when
voice,
it's crazy because, like, you know, the amount of work that you put into your craft, whether it's stage acting, whether it's like musical performance, and just learning all these different languages like Swahili. Like, no one would have guessed, like, you know, Paul St. Peter knows Swahili.
I would never have thought to use Swahili or Zulu as an actor, and sometime maybe possibly as a coach, but I went into work on Resident Evil 5, and the director handed me these lines and said, "It's Swahili, do you think you can handle it?" And I said, "Very close to Zulu, which I've handled before." So I didn't just rattle them off, I practiced a bit, but I got these things out very well. And there I wasn't. I forgot about being in the credits. So I was doing an RPG game with a couple of younger guys, and they came to play, and they said, "Dude, were you in Resident Evil 5?" Yeah. I don't know why they would ask. They said, "We looked in the credits, and there you were. That was you." I said, "Oh, that's Paul." I said, "Yep." I said I was a zombie, and I spoke Swahili.
So you just happen to have this in your repertoire. Like, do you ever get these people that are, you know, working with you behind the scenes that are just like amazed at, like, how do you know this? Like, well, where do you get this?
Well, I get more, I would say, not so much from my fellow actors, but more from the producers and directors. I was looping a film, and I was explaining part of what I did, and one of the producers there who said, "Oh, no, don't be using those $1 words on a 10-cent guy like me," you know. So the technical knowledge and my studies as an actor and later on as a teacher, because everyone who ever taught me asked me to come and teach for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't my intention to be a teacher. I hated school, you know. Never went to college. And here I am, I've taught at 5 universities now.
Yeah, well, when you just talked about that in the panels, like it hit home to me too, because like I haven't been to college either, but like I always hated school, and it's just like, wow, you know, here's a person who's literally like the Ernest Hemingway of the industry, who has these fascinating stories all the time that we get to hear at these lovely conventions, like here at Omni Fandom Expo, and it's just, you know, it's like an inspiration, like, and you tell it how it is, like at your panels, like acting is like one of the worst jobs, like, you know, it's very demanding. You tell the truth about it, and you're like, well, now, but here's your chance. You know, this is how you kind of get, and you teach like how you get into the industry.
Yeah, the wonderful voice and commercial actor Bo Billingsley was doing a panel with me, and I think that it was might have been a Cowboy Bebop panel, because it was Bo, Steve Bloom, and I doing that. And someone asked Bo about that. Well, you know, I'm thinking about you know, acting, voice acting, and all that. And the first thing Bo said is, "Don't." It's if it's a passion with you, like in my particular case, I just can't think of anything else I want to do. This is really the only thing that's right for me, and it's part of my inner peace is that I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. But if you don't feel that way about it, if it's not something that is just all-consuming, then don't. It is a path to misery. You will not become happy because you're an actor. Happiness comes from other things. If it's the craft that you need to feed your inner self, then go for it. But if it's just this notion of, well, I can make money, or I think it would be fun, you're in for a bad time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I thought you were going to say something.
No.
I just cleared my throat. So
Yeah.
So, in addition to these voice acting panels that you do, you also did a pirate panel here on Friday night.
I did indeed. Pirate curses.
Pirate curses. I also participated in this one, and I can attest to some of his voice acting tips that don't do certain things with your voice because you will hurt it.
Yes. Yes, you have to be very careful. Many of the things I do effectively, I'm able to make work because of my technical knowledge as a singer, as a speech teacher, as what I like to call a speech technician, and simply using the vocal instrument itself. You need to know what hurts, what doesn't, how much you can get away with. When I do voices like the Kurama voice, excuse me, I try to explain to people it is a form of scraping your vocal folds together, which is not good, okay? But I get away with it by breathing through it. So there's a lot of air underneath what I'm doing here. As opposed to what you see these people in these rock videos doing, these, you know, heavy metal going, and you just damage. And some people can't do that for more than 5 minutes, and they're in terrible shape. And so when I'm talking about my monster voices and what I do, I try to explain to all of them, I said, until you get trained, don't do this. Don't do it at home, don't do it any place. You will hurt yourself, possibly permanently.
So how much of it is just the training, and then how much of it is just a natural, innate sort of talent?
I'm kind of lucky in the sense that not only can I hear sound well, I can also reproduce it. Most people can't do both. As a matter of fact, a vast majority of people. I find this out as a teacher. I thought, well, of course, everybody can do this. It just came naturally to me. So when I began teaching, my first class at the academy, I was teaching the Irish dialect. And there were probably 18, 20 students in this section. And I would go person by person by person by person, shift by shift by shift by shift. This sound goes to this sound. And very few of them could do it. And I realized later on, I thought, actually, it is unusual. But very rare that you can actually reproduce the sound, hear that sound, having the ear for something like that, having it for music, that sort of thing.
Right.
And being able to do that effectively as an actor, to actually be able to put those things together and make creative human choices with them.
So how easy is it for you to switch between dialects and voices?
For me, it's very easy. And again, I thought it was just something everybody could do. You know, I was doing the demon voice with a friend of mine, and his was the first time I ever heard it many years ago. And so, I was messing around with him like that, and I decided to become a Cockney and speak that way now, and he couldn't do that. He says, I can do the voice, but I can't just, and I just threw it together like nothing. And sometimes I will do, the demon voice, make him a Cockney, and give him a speech impediment, And so that's just throwing things out there, and again, I'm able to do that automatically, and so, thank you, Mom and Dad, for the genes,
So how do you come up with a character voice?
There are several ways where I will come up with a voice for a particular character. Often we are just given a brief description. We're looking for this. What do you got? There are times when I get to see the picture. Often the picture of the character gives me an idea. They will sometimes give us a description and a picture, but nothing to say. And then I will just throw something together. I pick up a magazine and read it. When it's something where they're sending you a picture, a breakdown of the character, and lines of dialogue, you get a sense of this person's class. Are they richer? Are they poorer? Are they working class? Are they the idle rich? These give you ideas, and then if the lines are written with the character in mind, if it's someone that has, an advanced degree and they live back east and they're the sort of person that might speak this way, you're not going to hear them say ain't, So if somebody writes the dialogue in such a way that the character seems, working class or even rustic,
right.
Well, you're not going to choose a sort of a British voice for that sort of thing, not at all, because you want to make that person more like the class that his speech would indicate of him. There's a lot of different things. Sometimes I just will mess around with voices and come up with one and say, oh, write that down. How did you do that? Now, where would I use it?
Yeah.
Because my agent has not heard all the voices I do, and there are many voices I do that I've never been able to use on a job, That's a pity because I enjoy them,
So you just come up with random voices on your own that you just file away to use later.
Yeah, some of them are just, I don't see any value to them, and I remember how to do them, and all I need to do is write down the qualities. Okay, if for instance the character has a cold, that's a denasal quality. So people say you have a cold, you're nasal. It's actually the opposite. You can't breathe through here. Right. So it's now denasal. So that's when you hear people when they have colds, they can't say their eds and their ebs. Okay, so I did a character in a series called Mummy Nanny. And the character was in a waiting room of a hospital. And they said, okay, let's come up with something for this guy. And I said, okay, well, he's in a hospital. Why don't we make him sick? That's the answer that came to me. Where are you? Sometimes that determines what you come up with. And this character was very, very boring. He talked about carpeting all the time. And it was an anime, and all of the other characters in the waiting room were going nodding off when he was talking about, well, one of the most important things about carpet is not just the carpet itself, but also the padding, okay? And you have to have the right number of tack strips. Meanwhile, going, oh my God. And the engineer and the director were laughing their heads off, But that was what I call my cold voice, which is on my demo. And I actually finally, after all these years, got to use that voice.
Awesome, that's amazing. Has there ever been an instance where you felt like someone may have been unteachable, or had been difficult in training, or you had to I got to break this barrier with you. I got to work with you
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily untrainable, but it's like having the ear for this. You have it or you don't. I can't teach you to have a good ear if you don't. I can teach people technically. Okay, so when I say to somebody that the way you create the sound, if you're speaking Spanish, for instance, I can show them a dentalized sound. So instead of like that, so it's on the back of your teeth, I can technically teach them how to do that, but can I get them to hear Spanish and hear the differences in the vowels, the pronunciations? There's a sound in Spanish and also in Italian and Greek, and it's called a beta. and it's like a B and it's like a V at the same time, but it's neither. So, if you hear someone say 20 in Spanish, they say, little kids will say 20. It's because they're watching their parents. They can't hear the sound, so they look. And in fact, it sounds like this. V. So it's a V in a way, but it's also a B, but again, it's neither. So 20, like that.
Yeah.
Some people are unteachable in one way. I did work with one student. She couldn't hear it or do it. And bless her heart, she had done feature films. She did a Failure to Launch with Matthew McConaughey. And she was the first girl in the film. She was in his bed with him, and that's when Dad breaks in and she goes, "You live with your parents?" She's done tons and tons of work, but she has no ear for sound and she can't reproduce it. She couldn't even sing Happy Birthday. That's how tone deaf she is.
Wow.
So then would you say that's a problem that's less particular to people on the big screen than it is stage and voice actors?
Well, the best actors, in my opinion, have always been, in my experience too, have been the ones that have this stage background. They're solid as a rock. Nothing rattles us. You get up on a stage and I'm going to make this work. I work with what I call industry actors that are not crafted as actors. They get up and they take a couple of workshops and get in front of the mic or get in front of a camera and say, okay, well, I'm just going to do my natural thing, and maybe that does work for them. But that's also very limited. Their appeal and their skill set is very limited. Mostly in my experience when I work with the crafted stage actors, they're much better in front of camera or behind a microphone.
Would you say that the improvisation has something to do with that, with forming them into?
Gigantic. It's gigantic. You need to get up on stage, do improv. You need good instructors. Unfortunately, the first many experiences, I should say, with improv, I'd never had anyone teach me. It was just sort of the idea, hey, just get up and be funny. There are structures, there are games, there are things you're supposed to do. Once you learn those and you learn to trust yourself, improv is vitally important because, as I explain in my panels, very often the first answer that comes to you for a character or for something to say is the right one. When you do improv, you learn to trust that. Before I did, I was always like, no, something better has to come along, or I have to think of something else. But that first answer would have been brilliant. After you do improv for a long time, you learn to just let that come out. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's always honest. It's right off the top of your head.
So how often has that first instinct been wrong for you? Or has it ever been wrong for you?
Oh, it has been wrong in some cases because what I thought they wanted wasn't what they communicated to me. So I came up with a brilliant answer for what would have been very workable in another project or for another idea that somebody had. So yeah, the neurons were firing, the answers were coming, but they either didn't communicate what they wanted correctly or I misunderstood it, which is perfectly possible in my case.
And in a case like that, would the director work with you to get what they wanted, or would they just look for someone else?
In the case of an audition, you usually you will only get one chance. Okay. Usually you go up there and, okay, thank you, leave your pick and resume at the door in the old days, But now if they have you back because they liked what you did originally, they will then tweak and work with you more. That's what the callback is about. They liked what they saw. Now they want to come back and see if they can get some more from you and layer it some more. In cases like that, the director typically is going to be someone, if they know what they're doing, they'll be able to work with you and get the right kind of answer from you.
And in regards to auditioning, you talked about your process with doing these things and how you, like once you put it out there, how you deal with it. So you explained this at your panels, but can you explain that for those watching? Because I really love the philosophy you have behind it.
No, in terms of when you are given an audition and you're given a paper to work with, or you're going to be doing your audition at home, which happens quite a lot now. The vast majority of my auditions I record at home and send them off. When you have that audition process in your hands, that is the time to work and tweak and think about it and stress about it or obsess about it or whatever you might want to call that. And then it's over and you leave. You walk away. And it's like anything in life. When it's no longer in your hands to manipulate or control, don't keep grabbing for it. It's gone. The audition's over. And yet actors go home and stress and worry, and they look at the phone and they watch and listen and they check the machine and all this stuff obsessively, and keep thinking about what they should have done and what, it's no longer in your hands. You need to walk away. I've left an audition one time and I said, okay, I'm going to be staining my floor molding when I get home. It wasn't even anything to do with acting. That was my next project.
Yeah.
I had that on my mind. And it helps you get over the fact that most of the time the auditions do not result in you being cast and getting work.
So then rejection is a big part of the industry.
Yeah, and I don't even look at it as rejection. It feels like it, certainly. Sometimes, like, there was a great line from a play. I was doing scene study back when I was in junior theater, and a director was talking to an actress after the audition, and she was, she did not do well. And she said, I felt like I just auditioned for the role of a human being and I failed. And the director said, well, I know what you mean. So that was a person feeling so rejected, like, if I'm not even worthy to be alive anymore, that sort of thing. I look at it in terms of a choice that they could make, and it could be me, it could be somebody else. What I bring to a project is valuable. What the other person brings has its own value that might be different from mine. Often you go in and you might be the best actor for the job, but something about somebody else's voice was what they liked better.
Right.
And I've literally had that happen. Somebody said, you did the best acting job, you were the best actor there, and they were looking for a certain sound that they got from someone else. I absolutely respect that. I know they're wrong, but
Especially in the case of Wormmon, you cannot cast anybody else.
Yes, I just say this out to the world. This could land me in prison later, but if anybody else does Wormmon, you're dead. That's as simply as I can put it.
So with the Digimon anniversary coming up, do you know if you'll have anything to do with that project? Will you be coming back as Wormmon?
I'm not sure what they've got on the books for that and what kind of anime is done. I can say, quite simply, after we finished the series and after season 2, which was the only time Wormmon appeared, I did one commercial as Wormmon, and it was actually the anime, and it was Digimon all summer, and our characters were all talking on the phone, and I got to be Wormmon then. And then for the PS1 and PS2 games, I got to be Wormmon then, and I haven't touched it since. There hasn't been anything, and I want so badly for him to come back. And of course, this is nothing we can control by any means, but I would dearly love to see that back. I would love to come back in and play the role. I can do that voice forever.
One of the great things, like you said earlier, about how learning all these dialects has had this great impact on your career, as well as in Cowboy Bebop with the character of Punch, is just like, I would have never guessed that was Paul St. Peter when I first watched it. And I'm just like, it's actually played by a Spanish person, and it's probably that's what they cast it as. But then it's a mixture of
Texan also.
Yeah, that I didn't even catch. I've watched Cowboy Bebop entirely through twice, and then seen odd episodes here and there. And I never caught the Texan in it. I always caught the Spanish, but never the Texan.
Oh yeah, one of my cues was when I would begin the show, I would say "Shucks howdy," Spanish, and then I'd say "How y'all doing?" So that's how I would start it. And we did a weird mix because they said just break it up. And when I was approached about that, the executive producer, the late great Kevin Seymour, had said, can you do 2 accents at one time? I said, well, no, you can't do 2 accents at one time. I said, but I will change accents in the middle of a sentence for you. So that's why I would start off sounding like I was texting. I'd go like, hey, we got a new bounty here for you now, and it's a real doozy, So I did that in the movie,
Yeah.
And I listen to the playback now, and I keep going, what a bizarre thing that was, But being asked about doing that was where I did come up with that voice and that character. Now the accent is the one that I learned when I was in San Diego growing up. Okay, that was very much a San Diego, almost like a border accent where they picked that up, as opposed to what I would do in Los Angeles, the cholos and all that stuff. It's a different kind of speech.
Yeah, and then at the end of that series run, I remember you telling us that because like even in the show, the character of Punch is he's just playing a role, and then at the end when he meets his mother, it's just like.
Well, it was so strange to have my character only on TV. And of all things, Faye is in the hospital, and she sees me walking by with my mother. She doesn't recognize me as the actor, but she says, something about that guy. The kicker to that story is that about 5 years after we finished the series, I was walking into a studio, and the director, Mary, was coming out from a session with Wendy, who had played Faye.
Yeah.
And they were walking out, and I was going to go in and work with Mary. She was just saying goodbye, and I was going in there, but Mary saw me, and she said, "Shucks, howdy." And I said, "No bounty for no computer, no way." And Wendy's eyes got this big, and she said, "That was you?" Same story. Nobody has any idea it was Paul St. Peter.
And then, you said that they finally let you use your normal, like it was like the first time they let you use your normal voice for like the when in that scene?
Because with the series was canceled, I was just as the actor, having left the set and taken off the costume, just went to pick my mom up at the hospital, and I said, "Okay, Mom, let's walk this way." And it was just because I was about to do the accent again. They said, "No," and it becomes this reaction every time he's on the screen, and they're on those stupid wooden horses.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, let's go for it. He goes, no, the show's over, and you're off duty. You're no longer the character right now. You're just at home. You're just picking Mom up, and you're going to go home. And I thought, okay. And so I just spoke with my regular voice. It was the only time I think I had those 2 or 3 lines in that whole episode where the whole show I got to do that.
That's awesome.
But I just got a kick out of that Faye saying something about that guy, and then later on finding out that she really didn't know it was me.
I mean, it's just amazing to hear like how many different voices that you're able to do. It's like I'm surprised that like a casting director or like a voice director hasn't just been like all the roles can be just done by Paul St. Peter. Just like
Mummy Nanny was kind of like that. The director told me later, he says, "You could have done every single role. Everything you did was crystal clear and completely different." Again, the guy with the cold, I played Dracula. I was the lead character of Uncle Unk, But every time he would come up with a different character, or there would be another one. So, okay, we need to have you do this guy, this helicopter pilot, and he's military, So I decided I was going to be this sort of military, sir. We are hovering at an altitude of 250 feet, sir. And I did the whole thing like that, and he and the engineer, again, were laughing their heads off, because I just decided I'm going to go with this guy. Probably is going to be career military, probably can't speak any other way. And that's how I delivered the lines. And it's just one of those, when he told me later on, he says, everything you did was so different. I should have just handed all the roles to you, I did like a dozen roles, I think, on that series.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing like a project that you do where just the credits are just Paul St. Peter, 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 and Paul St. Peter.
It's sort of like in the days when you get somebody that directs, produces, and writes a project, okay? And normally they will say produced, written, and directed by. But the ones that are vain will actually have produced by Jim Smith. Next credit. Written by Jeff Smith. Then the next credit, directed by, because I want to see as many credits as I can because I worked so hard. I get it. But most of the time, written and produced, they put them together.
Has there ever been a case where you've been a hero character, but then also the same villain character you were fighting?
I dubbed a Chinese film from, I don't speak Mandarin, but from Mandarin to English. And the director brought me in to play 2 characters, and I did play a bad guy, shaved head. And this was in probably 15th century China. And my first appearance as a character in that was as a good guy. I was an ally to a general. And the general had been wrongly accused of killing a bunch of civilians. He got the nickname of Butcher Lee, but he wasn't the one that did it. He tried to stop it. But as he fled to get away because he would be captured and executed, they pinned it on him. But we as friends all knew better. So I was playing his friend, one of his fellow soldiers, but also I played the bad guy with the skinhead. And near the end of the film, my bad guy character knocks an arrow, draws it back, and shoots my good character through the back. So I killed myself. And later on, I was in another combat as a skinhead guy. He got killed too.
It's awesome. Is that you also tell like voice acting is so different than stage acting and everything like that. People may have this misconception of where, okay, as a stage actor or as just a regular TV actor or movie actor, you're working off of other people's energy and stuff like that. As compared to voice acting, you're in a booth by yourself. You have no one to feed off of.
99% of the time, you're working alone. You may get to hear if someone else has recorded before you, hear what they're saying and react off of that. It has only been a few. I'd say I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I've been able to be in doing a game, for instance. Then they have the actors in there. I did something called XCOM. I played Dr. Heinrich, German rocket scientist, and the other actors were in the room, and when we had scenes together, we were talking back and forth and interacting. And I was so honored. I was thrilled. I got to go in for 2 days and do that.
Yeah.
And got to make friends with these new guys, but it was one of those things where if I changed my reading, he might change his. If he changed his, I might change mine. We got to interact and actually be actors and eye contact and all that stuff. So it was like being on stage again.
So in that case, you did get to improvise a little more.
Well, we were still stuck with the lines of dialogue, and it has to do with the timing and the content that has been approved, of course. But the way I performed it, absolutely.
Okay.
And sometimes the director would say, Dr. Heinrich, I think you should be a little more afraid at this point, because at one point of the game they kill me. But I would tweak that a little bit. Other times, my performance originally was I was more defiant. I thought, well, I'm in danger here, but I don't think they'll kill me. So he said, we'll play the fear this time, and then we would try it differently the other time. And it's hard to tell what's going to eventually end up in the game, because those are the choices we don't get to make.
Right. So as far as voice acting goes between anime and video games, which one do you like better, and which one is more demanding, would you say?
Well, the typical role that I play in a video game makes it a much more demanding job, because you are going to be there most of the time longer. You have a million cues that have to do with reactions and sounds that you make, and they need a variety of them. They'll say, okay, this is you dropping something on your foot, give us 5. And so it's 5 versions of, ow, oh, and then you have a million cues, and you have to do 5 of each, or you do 3 of each, like I did today with Derek. And I said, the way things are done in the game, I said, let me direct you. I said, okay, Derek, I need efforts. Okay, give me 3 small efforts, 3 medium, and 3 large. And you have to do that. You'll give them 3, give them 3 more, give them 3 more. And if they liked all of them, great, you'll move on to the next cue. But it might be another version of that. Okay, this is another effort, but this time you've got something on your shoulders. So the weight's heavier, and you're having, and they look for all that variety, and you need to do that stuff over and over and over again. You can be 4 hours in there doing that, and maybe screaming the death scenes after you've done all of your dialogue. You've done all of your lines for the character, and then you go to the screaming part. Anime is more in terms of being episodic. It's more in terms of interacting in a scene, a dialogue scene with someone. So even though you're working alone, you are working off of the content in there. It isn't just a lot of random stuff that you have to create yourself. They're going to put it later, so if somebody walked up to you like that, the sound I did would be put into that. Okay, so they're going to be mixing all that stuff, but the initial hard work that goes into that is all the actor.
Right. So what are some of your favorite roles that you've ever had to play?
Well, I'd dearly love to do Kurama. That's wonderful. When the writing is good, I always say this, it's a joy to act in voiceover when the writing is good and you have a good director, because everything works, Kurama is a real joy to do. I love playing Xemnas, very much so. But the tie, because I can't pick one or the other because they're apples and oranges. It's a tie, my two favorite characters, with Wormmon and Punch. Because Wormmon was so sweet and pathetic and sad and lovable, and you want to pick him up and hug him. And Punch was just so bizarre. You can't really compare the two and say, well, what did it feel like? How did you learn from one for the other? Oh, no. That's why I say apples and oranges.
No, and it was just so meta with Punch as well too. It's just like, like he's an actor in a show, which is like, a show.
Yeah.
And it's just, and you're an actor in a show who gets to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like
another fun one for me too was when I did the animated feature Paprika.
Oh,
Paprika. And if I can remember my character's name correctly, I think it was Konakawa. I was Detective Konakawa. And that was very good because it was like a feature film. It was a very adult plot line. This wasn't, hey, let's have, kids and, people digivolve and poke bottles and battles and crap like that. It's actually something that is telling a story that is very, very adult, and it just happens to be anime. And they said, we want these to be very, very subtle. We want these to be done in such a way that the characters are believable, and that's where we as actors get to shine a little bit more with the acting choices. And again, I keep telling people it's still acting.
No, it definitely is.
Never forget that.
I considered honestly voice acting like to be harder than regular acting because like we've discussed is that you're mainly there by yourself, and it's just you have to hit the cues. You have to time your speech with what's going on in the anime or whatever, and so it's like you have to be on point by reading, and it's so much effort and hard work that goes into this.
Well, sure. When I talk about the demands put upon an actor, I know from having been on stage a lot, I know from having done a fair amount of on-camera stuff, the tools that you have to work with on stage, the tools you get to use when you're on camera are not available to you when you're doing voice acting. You stand and it's all here. So you need to, communicate the character, of course, and the emotion, the intensity, and the intelligence of what's going on. Am I telling the story properly? All of these things come into play. And you have only your voice. You don't even really get to move.
Now, as you've done, you've become pretty much like this industry in your industry, like a leader for fellow actors, and you've been advocating for more rights for voice acting and trying to actually get residuals because as we know, it is a struggle. Like once you put out there and see the works that you do make so much money, and then can you discuss a little bit more about that?
Well, first of all, that is the way it's designed, and if it's something that makes me unhappy, in a way it's my fault because I chose to do it. One of my best instructors from a young age was a terrific actor named Howard Kane, and he said to us, look, nobody asked you people to become actors. There's no invitation from heaven. Nobody walks in and said, you, my son, will become an actor, you must be an actor, you have to be. No, it was a choice we made, so whatever happens is our responsibility from that moment forward. So I know what it's like. In terms of how I feel about it, well, yes, it does anger me that someone can take my work and make money off of it in perpetuity and not give me anything. We have residuals for TV work, we have residuals for commercial work, we have residuals for feature films. We get residuals on anime if it's a union project and they can play, this is the way the contract exists right now, they can play your work up to a year, as much as they want. If they start playing it after that, a residual formula kicks in. So there is some of that there. When we were on strike, one of the things we said was we need to come up with a formula for the residuals. We hadn't decided necessarily on percentages, dollars, because you can't until you actually, yes, there it is. But we said these residuals would kick in only after they had sold 2 million units. And then after they got to 8 million, they cut off. We didn't get residuals after that. It was only in that bracket. We were very, very reasonable about that. Every production company in the world thinks that once they give you 1 penny in residuals, that's the thin end of the wedge. It's going to ultimately topple the world. And the industry as we know it will disappear. Oh, because of all those horrific residual payments we're making. No, nothing like that. And yeah, as a union man, as an advocate for what I do as an actor, I need to be active. I think it's my responsibility. Screen Actors Guild and now SAG-AFTRA is notorious for apathy. Nobody does anything. Nobody volunteers. It's even hard to get them out during strike on a picket line. Carry the signs, get out there, get on the news, tell them this is what's going on. And I've done that, and I've done that again, and I've served on Dubbers committees and things like that. I'm not the most active union member I know. I know other people that do more, but I try to get out there and do things when I can. And as a person, as I say, an OG of the anime and gaming section of show business, I do have a responsibility because people tell me, you're a legend, people look up to you, and that's, I don't consider it a burden, but I do consider it a responsibility and in a way a duty. It is in a way a duty.
So ultimately, a lot of this comes back to why you say don't be an actor, is because it's really something that is going to feed your soul more than more than your body.
Yeah, if it's something, as I say, if you have to do it, okay, if it's something that you really must do, then there isn't a choice in a way. Right. But also that's very freeing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. When I get behind the mic or I'm going to go on stage, I am 3 feet off the ground. There's no doubt in my mind I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So I forget the rest of the world. This is why I'm on the planet. It's that clear to me. And yes, when people ask me, well, what else would you do? Yeah, I'd like to be an archaeologist. You know, I would love to go out to these amazing, and again, that historian in me.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like whenever you come to these conventions, you talk about the history, especially like the pirate history and all that stuff. It's just I'm just like fascinated. I'm like, this guy's supposed to be a voice actor, but he knows more than my every single history teacher that I've I've learned from at school.
Yeah, the pirate panel was a real treat because I remember my 7th grade geography teacher also did a huge thing on pirates. I was like, oh man, this is taking me back. I'm remembering all these things.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things about my own personal studies that just, again, they're things that interest me. I never thought I would say, you know, if you learn about the American Civil War, that's going to help me as an actor later, you know. And I've read a million books about the American Civil War, Native American culture and history and linguistics. I have 70 books, and I've read almost all of them. You know, I have a book called The Languages of Native America, and I've studied that, and it teaches you all this wonderful stuff. All of the things I've ever learned have really grounded me and made me a deeper person and a better actor. You know,
right? Because it's just you're assimilating all this knowledge about other peoples and expanding your. I guess you could say reservoir of empathy to put you in those roles.
You bet. And being able to connect with other human beings, no matter who they are, simply makes you a better person. And as a better person, you can be a better actor.
Well, that's that. I think that's all. That's.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a really good
That's
capping
a good
point.
ending. Yeah.
So that right there, a moral to this episode: be a better person.
I got probably deeper than you guys wanted to go, but
no. That's exactly
like
what
that.
we love. That's why we do this. We love bringing people to talk about what they're passionate about. That's our whole purpose for our channel.
Anyway,
Thank you, Zia.
Thank you, Paul.
Kay.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you all for watching. This has been Geek Tank. I'm Zia.
And I'm Kay.
And I'm Paul.
And and we will see you next time.
Next time on Geek Tank.
Alright. So sync up the mics and the camera. Do some claps.
We are sunk.
There we go. Do our warm-ups. Yep.
That's the Kurama warm up. Yeah.
The one that scares people away in the elevators.
That's right. I really did do that a second time just to be a jerk. I wanted to see how people would react. I was like,
Do you do that often? No, just the 2 times.
just the two. The one time, again, honestly, I was just
Yeah,
I was
you're
caught
just
up in
warming
what I
up,
was
yeah.
doing, and I'm and got ready for the audition, and I went. That probably is scary, isn't it? So then the second time I did it just to see what reactions would be, and the same thing happened. They all kind of went.
Well, if you ever get mugged, just do that. Just
Right.
they'll go running.
They better look out for Kurama. Don't mess with Kurama. No.
All right. Let's start us off with the intro. In 3, 2, 1.
Shoot, I know I was gonna say something. I forgot.
You have to make a cut here, man.
Yeah.
That's right. We'll fix this in the mix. You know.
In the post edit.
That's something we said in when we were doing SDF Gundam. The joke running around was, "We'll fix it in the mix." Wait, this is the mix. Oh, we'll fix it in post. Wait, this is post. You know.
Oh yeah, now I remember now.
About time, Jesus.
Sorry
You
for
work with
taking-
this guy. I don't get it. Man.
Yeah, man, he's such a pain.